I'm Katie Couric. Lady Bird Johnson has died. The former First Lady, who was dedicated to making America more beautiful, passed away at her home in Austin this afternoon. We'll look back at her life. Also tonight, getting out of Iraq. Everyone's talking about it. This man knows firsthand how dangerous a pullout will be.
You're setting up a lucrative target for some car bombing or some kind of missile attack.
Prosecutors say they've cracked the case of the bizarre collar bomb bank robbery. They say the victim was in on it, but his brother says no way.
Brian did not put that collar on himself.
And why that debit card purchase may cost you a lot more than you bargained for.
This is the CBS Evening News with Katie Couric.
Hello, everyone. She was one of the longest living First Ladies in American history, a Southern belle who made it her mission to keep America beautiful. Lady Bird Johnson died today at her home in Austin, Texas. She was 94 years old. She and her husband, Lyndon Baines Johnson, occupied the White House during one of the most turbulent times in our history. Yet she was always the embodiment of gentility. Harry Smith looks back on her life.
She was born Claudia Alta Taylor in 1912. A nurse called her Lady Bird. It was a nickname she hated, but it stuck. It's a good thing, though, because this daughter of a successful businessman in Karnak, Texas, grew up to be one of the country's most influential environmentalists. After her mother died when she was 5, she found comfort in the beauty of the Texas landscape.
I knew all the trees and brooks and backcountry roads within walking distance of my home.
She planned to be a newspaper reporter until she met Lyndon Baines Johnson. She was short and shy. He was just the opposite. He proposed after their first date. 10 weeks later, she said yes. Mrs. Johnson used part of her inheritance to back her husband's first political campaign for a seat in the House, launching a long, successful congressional career. She documented the ups and downs in the years that followed. When Lyndon Johnson lost the Democratic nomination for president in 1960, he was asked to join the Kennedy ticket. And on November 22, 1963, the vice president and his wife were in Dallas, just 2 cars behind the president.
President Kennedy died at 1 p.m. Central Standard Time, 2 o'clock Eastern Standard Time.
Johnson was sworn in on Air Force One with Jacqueline Kennedy looking on. A year later, Mrs. Johnson became the first First Lady to campaign without her husband, defending the Civil Rights Act to its strongest opponents.
We've had a wonderful time coming across this lovely state.
She traveled through 8 states in the Deep South and delivered 47 speeches. By 1965, she was on her own mission to beautify the nation. First, she focused on cleaning up the Capitol, then set her sights on the rest of the country.
You know, the highways may be America's biggest monument.
While President Johnson tried to build the new society, he ultimately lost the public support over the escalating war in Vietnam and decided not to seek re-election in 1968. Mrs. Johnson stood by Lyndon until the day he died of a heart attack in 1973. She continued her environmental crusade for another 3 decades and spent the last years of her life in Texas among the wildflowers she treasured.
I got determined to save a little habitat, a little of our legacy, if I could. So I've had good fun working on it. Lordy mercy, I made so many friends and enjoyed so many trips and learned so much.
And you've done a good job.
Harry Smith, CBS News, New York.
When she died this afternoon in Austin, Lady Bird Johnson was surrounded by her family, including her daughters, Linda Bird Robb, wife of former Virginia Senator Chuck Robb, and Lucy Baines Johnson, who once said, "My mother made her own unique imprint on this land." Bob Schieffer, our chief Washington correspondent and anchor of Face the Nation, knew Lady Bird Johnson very well. Bob, she was a true partner to LBJ, wasn't she?
Yes, she really was, Katie. You know, in Washington, we talk about our elder statesmen as being the wise men of Washington. Lady Bird Johnson was a wise woman. Her great legacy, of course, will be the wildflowers and what she did for our environment. But the important work, I think, in a sense that a lot of people don't know about, she truly was the most influential advisor around Lyndon Johnson. She was the one who kept him in check. She was the one who counseled him. She was the one who told him the things he didn't always want to hear. She was as much a part of the Lyndon Johnson presidency in many ways as Lyndon Johnson himself.
And I know that Eleanor Roosevelt was her role model, not the more glamorous Jackie Kennedy, but how does she compare to other first ladies?
I think as a matter of, as an influential, I think she will rank as one of the most influential first ladies of all. I tell you something, Katie, we lost a great American today with the passing of Lady Bird Johnson, and to the end, she was interested in public affairs. I would talk to her daughters, both Linda and Lucy. I talked to Lucy just recently. Even in these last days, she still wanted to be briefed on what was going on. She still wanted to know what the latest news was. She had great political antenna. She was a part of the Johnson presidency as no other person was. She was a great woman.
Bob Schieffer in Washington. Bob, thank you so much. Like President Johnson, meanwhile, President Bush is dealing with an unpopular war, and tomorrow the White House delivers a progress report to Congress, and it's expected to say the Iraqis are not meeting most of their political, military, or economic benchmarks. Today, National Security Advisor Stephen Hadley asked Republican senators to bear with the administration until September. But another Republican joined those calling for a U.S. troop withdrawal. Olympia Snow of Maine is co-sponsoring a bill that would start the pullout within 4 months.
I think it's important for us to say this is a final window of opportunity in sending a very strong, clear, unequivocal message to the Iraqi government that we are charting a different course.
Even if the decision were made to withdraw U.S. troops from Iraq, physically getting them out would pose an enormous challenge. That's according to military planners who recently presented their findings to the Joint Chiefs of Staff. CBS News has learned their study concludes a U.S. pullout would be extremely complicated, dangerous, and couldn't be accomplished overnight. David Martin has this exclusive report.
Present! A complete U.S. withdrawal from Iraq would take more than 2 years if the military brought all its equipment home, less than 1 year if it left most of it behind. That according to a new Pentagon study just presented to the Joint Chiefs of Staff.
Defense officials say the study was done not because a pullout is about to be ordered, but because basic decisions have to be made for if and when that day ever comes.
The study assumes a pullout would occur under combat conditions, or as one official put it, the last guy out is a guy who can fight his way out.
You're the most vulnerable in any theater of operation when you're leaving.
Now retired and running a horse farm, Gus Pagonis commanded the pullout after the first war with Iraq, under much easier conditions.
There was no enemy threat, nothing at all. Now you're in a terrorist war type activity where security will still have to be continued, which will be a massive exercise.
There are 20 combat brigades in Iraq, each with about 50,000 tons of equipment. But that's less than half of what's there.
Oh yeah, you have hospitals, the medical, ammunition depots, supply depots, water depots.
But they all have to come out.
Oh yeah, they all have to come out, and they have to come out in an early fashion.
On top of that, there are 129,000 private contractors working for the U.S. government. They all would have to come out on the same roads they went in on.
There's not too many roads that you can actually take a truck with a tank on.
Is it going to be bumper to bumper on those roads coming out?
Oh yeah, they'll have to be.
There were ambushes on those roads when American troops went in, and the threat hasn't gone away.
As soon as you park 5-6 vehicles, you're setting up a lucrative target for some car bombing or some kind of missile attack.
The pullout would be faster if neighboring Jordan and Turkey allowed U.S. forces to come through their territory. But defense officials say the critical factor is how much of the American military arsenal would be turned over to the Iraqis. As for how much it would cost, no one has yet done the math. David Martin, CBS News, the Pentagon.
In the war on terror, Al-Qaeda's #2 is calling tonight for a holy war against Pakistan's government. Ayman al-Zawahiri put out a new videotape calling for revenge after the government attacked a radical mosque, ending a siege that lasted more than a week. Today, funerals were held for some of those killed in the attack. More than 100 people were killed in the violence, mostly radical students. Turning back now to domestic politics, President Bush today ordered former White House counsel Harriet Miers not to testify tomorrow before a House panel investigating the firings of those 8 U.S. attorneys. The White House insists Miers is protected from testifying by executive privilege. Meanwhile, the president's former political director did appear before a Senate committee. Sarah Taylor didn't say much, except that she never heard President Bush discuss the firings.
I don't believe that anybody in the White House did any wrongdoing. I don't believe that.
Taylor refused to answer questions about whether the firings were politically motivated, also citing executive privilege. Now to one of the strangest mysteries in recent memory, that pizza delivery man killed by a collar bomb after robbing a Pennsylvania bank. After 4 years, prosecutors say the mystery has been solved. They say they now know who was behind it all. Cynthia Bowers has the story.
This picture fed round the world of a nervous and screaming 46-year-old Brian Wells sitting on the ground with a bomb around his neck was the beginning and end of a sinister plot to rob a bank, according to police. And authorities believe the then distraught Wells was in on it.
Unfortunately, our investigation has led to the belief that Brian became involved in a limited role with a group of individuals who planned to rob the PNC Bank. He is both a participant and a victim.
In the minutes he sat begging for help that August afternoon back in 2003, Wells told police that he'd been delivering a pizza when he was attacked by gunmen who put an armed device around his neck and ordered him to go rob the bank or the device would go off. After being caught, he yelled to police that time was running out. The device blew up before the bomb squad could get there, killing him. Prosecutors now say Wells was part of a robbery planning group that included this woman, 58-year-old Marjorie Deal Armstrong, and this man, 53-year-old Kenneth Barnes, that together they concocted a bizarre neck bomb plot to ensure Wells came back with the money, that if caught, he could claim he was an innocent victim, and that if something went wrong and Wells died, he couldn't testify against the others.
Greed was their inspiration. Death was just another byproduct of an evil scheme.
Today, the two were charged with bank robbery, conspiracy, and weapons violations. In another bizarre twist, Deal Armstrong was already in prison for murder that came to police attention in this case when they found the chopped-up body of her boyfriend, James Roden, inside a freezer at a house near where Wells made his last pizza delivery. It's believed the boyfriend was killed to keep him quiet about the bank robbery.
Liar!
As the feds tried to lay out their case today, an emotional outburst from Wells' distraught family.
I can't imagine that they're trying to get the public to believe this.
If convicted, Deal Armstrong and Barnes could face life behind bars, but prosecutors admit they may never know exactly how big a role the man who lost everything played in the plot. Cynthia Bowers, CBS News, Chicago.
There is much more CBS News ahead, including the hidden costs of using that debit card. You'll pay a lot more than you think. But up next, look out, American drivers on a collision course with a sea of debris. Drivers face a lot of dangers these days, and some can come out of nowhere. It's estimated 25,000 accidents every year are caused by debris in the road. But now, as Sandra Hughes reports, some states are taking action to try to save lives on the road ahead.
In Los Angeles these days, rush hour traffic reports reveal a new kind of road hazard, one you might not have expected.
2 left lanes are blocked with a ladder. It's causing a lot of dodging and swerving.
Random debris tied up on pickup trucks dumped by the side of the road. So many reports of junk on the roads that the California Highway Patrol has a website warning drivers around the hazards.
This thing would have been like a 10-pound boomerang coming through your window.
The thing was the handle of a tool which fell off a truck and almost impaled a driver in Tacoma, Washington. In Auburn, Washington, a truck driver died when he flipped trying to avoid a tire on the highway. In New York, the driver of this car was killed by a flying piece of metal. And last summer, Los Angeles County Sheriff's Deputy David Paquette died when he swerved to dodge a stove that had fallen off the truck in front of him. Paquette, a former Marine, left behind a wife and 2 children. The driver who didn't secure that stove in his pickup truck has been charged with murder and faces 25 years to life if convicted. His trial is next month. According to officials who clean up the roads, every year they collect enough junk from California highways alone to fill this stadium, the LA Coliseum, 8 feet deep. The business of recycling is a big part of the reason people are piling their trucks full of junk.
Well, there's been an increase in both the scrap metal and scrap paper and cardboard. There's been a big increase in people collecting all the cardboard and bringing it to the recycling center.
So officials in California and 10 other states are getting tough. In some states, the new penalty for losing your load on the highway can be as much as $5,000. If that lost debris causes an accident, the penalty can be as much as a year in jail.
Oh, I'd hate to see that refrigerator fall off onto the highway there.
Officer Duke says educating drivers is key. For instance, piling pallets this high isn't safe.
I think it's very safe because the way I tied it, I think my ties are very good.
That's the problem, say officials. People think they have loads secured, even when it's painfully obvious they don't. Sandra Hughes, CBS News, Whittier, California.
And our special series concludes tomorrow with a look at a really sensitive issue. When are drivers simply too old to get behind the wheel? In other news tonight, lightning struck a storage tank at an oil refinery in New Jersey, and that set off a huge fire. The smoke could be seen for miles. No injuries were reported, and authorities said the fire didn't pose a threat to the surrounding neighborhood. Still ahead, paying with that debit card. What you don't know could cost you. So we'll fill you in after this. The next time you use your debit card to buy coffee and a muffin for breakfast, or anything else for that matter, you might want to check your balance. A report out today says overdrawing your account can ultimately cost you plenty. Anthony Mason reports.
When Lauren T., a college student from Atlanta, checked her bank account recently, she was caught by surprise. So this is your bank statement?
Right.
She was slightly overdrawn.
I was at the supermarket, spent $25, went over my account balance $5.
Without telling her she was overdrawn, her bank covered the $5, but charged her $25 for that loan.
I think they're sucking money out of the consumers.
Banks are cashing in on overdrafts, raking in more than $17 billion in fees last year, according to the Center for Responsible Lending, up from $10 billion just 2 years before.
And the single largest cause of overdrafts was using your debit card. And those debit card purchases are very small.
The average overdraft, about $16. The average bank fee, $34 for a loan that is typically paid off in less than 5 days.
If you were to calculate an annual percentage rate interest for that loan, it would usually be well into the 5 digits, so more than 10,000%.
What's more, those overdraft loans aren't covered under the Federal Reserve's Truth in Lending Act, so banks and credit unions aren't obligated to tell you about those astronomical interest rates.
Consumers should have the right to decline the service and the fee.
Congress today began considering legislation to give customers more information and protection. But the banks say the burden should be on the account holder.
At the end of the day, only the consumer does know their balance.
Debit or credit?
Debit.
You can instruct your bank not to pay overdrafts to avoid those exorbitant fees. Banks used to discourage insufficient funds. Now they've become a profit center. Anthony Mason, CBS News, New York.
In other financial news, AOL agreed today to pay $3 million and change its cancellation policies to settle a multi-state lawsuit. Customers had complained AOL made it difficult for them to close their dial-up accounts, and then the company charged them for services they thought had been canceled. Overseas, China took a step today toward restoring confidence in its food and drug industry. It banned companies from using a dangerous chemical in toothpaste. That chemical, which is also found, believe it or not, in antifreeze, turned up in toothpaste exported from China and sold here in the U.S. Also overseas, a remarkable discovery. Russian scientists today showed off the body of a baby mammoth that was found frozen in Siberia. It may have lived 10,000 years ago. The trunk and eyes are intact, and it even has some fur. Scientists believe mammoths lived for millions of years, but became extinct about 4,000 years ago. And one last look now at our top story, the death of Lady Bird Johnson. The former First Lady died today at her home in Austin, Texas, surrounded by family and friends. She was 94 years old. Mrs. Johnson became First Lady on one of the most tragic days in American history, November 22nd, 1963, after the assassination of President Kennedy. Lady Bird was a pioneer in the environmental movement, raising money to beautify the nation's capital and her home state of Texas. The funeral will be held in Austin. Mrs. Johnson will be buried at the LBJ Ranch alongside her husband, who died in 1973. And that is the CBS Evening News for tonight. I'm Katie Couric. Thanks so much for watching. I'll see you tomorrow. Good night.